The story begins with an extreme gamer named Alan, who's just finished a game that took him a grueling 3 years to complete. But instead of feeling accomplished, he's left disappointed because the whole thing was a letdown. Despite all the time and effort he poured into it, the game never truly challenged him. And what Alan really wants is something that'll push him to the brink, a game so relentlessly difficult it'd take a whole decade just to beat. He's craving a real test, not something you can brute force with enough patience. With that in mind, he jumps straight into the search for his next big challenge, and that's when he stumbles across a mysterious title that claims to never end. Under normal circumstances, a game installing itself on his computer without permission would be a huge red flag, but he's already completely hooked and doesn't bother backing out. Instead, he dives straight into the settings menu to tweak the difficulty. Wanting the experience to be as punishing as possible, he cranks the difficulty all the way up to Hell mode and chooses the untested Summoner class just to make things even more chaotic. Without reading a thing, he accepts every term and condition. Unfortunately for him, one of those clauses mentions transporting the player to another world, and before he can process it, Alan finds himself reborn as a newborn baby in the middle of the countryside. A full year passes and life as a baby turns out to be way better than Alan expected. He doesn't have to work, worry about money, or deal with responsibilities, and on top of that, the milk is more than unbelievable, and he has kind and loving parents who take good care of him. His father is named Rodin and his mother is Theresia, and they seem like a genuinely happy couple. Still, setting the game to Hell mode makes it feel like a classic tragic backstory family situation waiting to happen. One night after being put to bed, Alan raises his tiny arms and starts muttering every command phrase he knows, desperately trying to bring up a status screen. After all, even though he's supposed to be a summoner, he has no clue how summoning is actually supposed to work. Just before giving up and falling asleep, he decides to try one last time, and this time, something really does appear. Unfortunately, it scares Alan so badly that he starts screaming, causing his parents to rush into the room as soon as they hear him. With no choice, he hides the book for the moment. After checking on him and making sure everything is fine, his parents leave the room. The second they're gone, Alan pulls the book back out. Relief washes over him as he finally gets to see his stats after an entire year of trying, and they look about right for a 1-year-old summoner. All of his summoning skills are stuck at the lowest tier, but the book explains that they'll improve the more he uses them. So Alan decides to test it out right away, and from what he can tell, he's currently limited to summoning H-rank insects and beasts, which sounds ridiculously weak, so he's not expecting anything impressive at all. Right then, the book suddenly flips to the message section, and Alan realizes he's received a letter from the world's god of creation. The deity apologizes for how long it took to finish Alan's status book, explaining that the summoner class was still being developed, and it ended up taking an entire year to clear all the required approvals. Alan couldn't care less about the apology, but hearing that the summoner class was rushed at the last minute gets him excited. If it was pushed out in a hurry, then there are definitely bugs left behind for him to mess with. Fired up, he decides to test it immediately. He wants to start by summoning an insect, but he quickly runs into a problem when he realizes he has no idea how to actually activate his summoning ability. Normally, he would just check a subreddit or watch a quick tutorial, but there's no internet here, so he's stuck figuring it out by himself. After thinking it over for a few minutes, Alan finally figures out that he needs to create an insect skill card first. He gives it a shot, and it works without any issues. Now he's finally ready to summon his insect, but before he can do anything, his mother comes in to check on him again. With no other choice, Alan quickly pretends to be asleep once more. The following day, after his parents get busy with their usual work, Alan opens his grimoire and finally summons the grasshopper. The room floods with bright light, and at first he's completely taken in by how beautiful it looks. That feeling lasts about a second until a massive grasshopper flies straight into his face and he completely freaks out. After calming down, he realizes this is actually the grasshopper he summoned, so he tries giving it commands. Unfortunately, even though it's a summon, it still has the brain of a grasshopper and doesn't understand a single word he says. But on the plus side, Alan discovers that summoning it boosts his agility and endurance stats, which makes him pretty happy. Sadly, his excitement catches his mother's attention, and when she sees the giant grasshopper on the floor, she instantly squashes it, leaving Alan completely devastated. During the next few days, Alan keeps experimenting with his insect summoning, but eventually he gets bored of it and decides to move on to beast summoning instead. This time, he summons a mouse, and just like before, the book launches it straight at his face, but luckily Alan was ready for it, so it doesn't scare him as much. The mouse also comes with its own stat boost, but it's still not very smart, so having a real conversation is impossible. That said, one of its skills is called Scurry, and whenever Alan orders it to use that ability, it does so every single time. But even so, the skill itself is pretty damn useless, so Alan quickly realizes that if he wants to summon stronger and more useful creatures, he'll need to level up his summoning abilities first. Alan's grimoire reveals that he can store up to 10 summoning cards at a time, and better yet, the stat buffs from each summon stack together. So if he loads up 10 mouse cards, that's a plus 10 boost to both attack and HP. That alone already puts him well beyond your average baby. But to really break the system and go full overpowered, he's gonna need to start leveling up fast. Normally, that wouldn't be such a pain, but the genius Alan chose Hell Mode because he thought the extra difficulty would be fun. Now, gaining experience takes 100 times longer than usual, which means he's officially locked himself into a hellish grind fest. Later that day, Rodden stumbles back into the house, drenched in blood, but thankfully, none of it is his. He just helped the village guys bring down a giant boar. Alan's eyes light up with curiosity, so Rodden offers to take him to see it. Without hesitation, Alan climbs onto his dad's shoulders and they head off toward the hunting grounds. For Alan, this is the first time he's ever gotten to see the world beyond their home, and he's absolutely soaking in the new scenery. But the trip takes longer than he expected, and eventually he dozes off in Rodden's arms. When they finally reach the boar's body, Rodden gently wakes him up. Alan blinks a few times, then freezes. This boar is enormous. He can't even begin to imagine how his dad managed to help kill something that huge. Not long after, the nearby villagers notice Rodden's return and erupt into cheers, hailing him as the hero of the day. Alan turns to ask if the great boar is really that strong, and Gerda explains that it's classified as a C-rank monster. Normally it takes around 20 hunters to bring one down, so yeah, they're a pretty big deal. That little detail sticks with Alan because now he has a solid benchmark for measuring monster strength. But before he even dreams of summoning something on that level, he knows one thing for sure. He's got to buckle down and start grinding XP like crazy. After 10 relentless months of grinding, Alan finally hits level 2 as a summoner, and with it comes a pretty solid upgrade. His stats get a general boost across the board, and more importantly, he unlocks the ability to summon and fuse G-rank monsters. Hype as that is, there's a catch. Fusion costs a hefty chunk of MP, so Alan wolfs down dinner to refill some mana and rushes back to his room, only to be hit with disappointment again. His grimoire lets him know loud and clear that his max MP still isn't high enough to even attempt a fusion, so back to the grind it is. Fast forward to when Alan turns 3 and he finally gets his MP stat to a high enough level to try out his new skill. He opens the fusion section and manages to create his very first G-rank summon, a bird which he proudly names Chappie. Chappie's main ability is Voice Mimic, which lets it flawlessly copy any voice it hears, perfect for setting traps or messing with enemies. Alan also adds a frog and a mole to his squad, and the frog is pretty useless because all it does is jump up and flash like a living distraction, but the mole is way more useful because it can tear a massive hole in the ground in seconds. Compared to the H-rank summons, these new ones are way more useful, and for the first time, Alan actually feels like he's playing a proper game instead of just grinding in baby mode hell. Still, he's nowhere near strong enough to take on real threats yet. Around this time, Gerda's daughter Krina shows up looking to hang out. Her version of playing involves sparring, and unfortunately for Alan, she's absurdly strong. He even maxes out all his summon buffs to stand a chance, but she still wipes the floor with him like it's nothing, meaning the girl's on another level. By the end of the day, Alan and Krina head home, and there's a surprise waiting for him. Theresia is pregnant again. Looks like while Alan was off grinding levels, Rodden and Theresia were busy leveling up the family. With Theresia now unable to do heavy work, Alan offers to help out with the harvest. After all, with his summon buffs, his physical stats are basically on par with an adult's now, but his parents immediately shoot that down. They tell him he should just stick to small chores and enjoy being a kid for now. Rodden reminds him that real responsibilities will come soon enough, so he should enjoy the peace while it lasts. Alan feels a little let down at first after being told he can't help with the harvest, but then it hits him. Farm work is absolutely brutal. No sane parent would expect their 3-year-old to be out there doing backbreaking labor. Understanding that, he backs off and lets it go. Rodden's relieved to see his son being mature about it, and things settle down until Theresia brings up something odd she noticed. She says she saw Alan in the backyard earlier, throwing rocks at a tree. Curious, she asks what he was up to. Alan brushes it off, claiming it was just self-defense training in case a monster shows up. But truthfully, he was running an experiment, testing whether he could unlock skills outside of summoning just by repeating basic actions, but sadly, that attempt didn't get him anywhere. Rodden, however, is still impressed with Alan's dedication and says he's looking forward to his appraisal ceremony. Alan's never heard of that before, so he asks what it is. Rodden explains that when a child turns 5, they undergo an appraisal to reveal any hidden talents or skills they might possess. And if Alan ends up with a powerful one, he could have a shot at living a wealthy and successful life. As winter arrives, Alan continues experimenting and decides to test how durable his summons are by summoning a grasshopper out in the snow. To his surprise, it manages to survive out there for an entire day, which he considers a win. But that little win quickly turns into a disaster when Krena pops up again, eager for another sparring match. As usual, Alan gets stomped, but while he's busy fighting her off, he totally forgets about his summon. That's when things take a turn. The grasshopper, still active, ends up crawling up Theresa's leg, scaring the hell out of her. She trips and falls, dangerous enough on its own, but especially risky since she's pregnant. Rodden rushes over, and though Theresa says she's okay, it's clear the fall triggered labor. Whether they're ready or not, the baby's coming now. Rodden quickly tells Krena to go fetch her mom, and once she arrives, she helps Theresa through a rushed delivery. By sunrise, the family welcomes a brand new baby boy into the world. Everyone is filled with joy except Alan, who's left feeling conflicted. He still doesn't understand why a game reincarnated him into this world in the first place. But when he thinks back to his old life in Japan, he realizes there wasn't really much waiting for him there. This new life, unexpected as it is, has given him something far more important. That's why he makes up his mind to keep pushing forward, not just for himself, but to protect the only real family he's ever had. By the time spring rolls around, Alan knows his appraisal ceremony is coming up, so he asks his dad what it's actually like. His father explains that every kid has to go through it once they hit 5 years old, and if Alan ends up with a rare or high-ranking skill, he might just land a shot at the elite path. That said, it's not going to be easy. Competition's pretty fierce this year. A whole bunch of kids are turning 5 at the same time, including Krena. They all make their way to the commoner district where the ceremony's being held. But as they get closer to the church, Alan starts noticing something weird. Most of the other kids look super polished and dressed up, while he's stuck in borderline tatters. Now that he's paying attention, he realizes he's been dressed like this since birth. If that's any indication, his family must be seriously low on the social ladder. Still, it doesn't really bother him much. When they reach the church, everyone gathers outside in front of it. A couple of priests step out, and Alan hears folks in the crowd mocking some of the poorer families. The priests aren't having it though. They shut that talk down fast, reminding everyone that divine blessings don't discriminate. Even a broke farmer's kid could be handed a legendary skill. With that, they usher the crowd inside for the actual ceremony. As Alan steps in, he notices 3 towering statues near the altar. They must represent the deities worshipped in this world. One of them is Elmia, the deity of creation. Come to think of it, Elmia is the same one who sent him that apology message about the delay in developing the summoner class. First up for appraisal is Palomas, the village chief's son. He's told to place his hand on the glowing crystal sphere to reveal his stats. Palomas obeys, and a moment later, the stone wall lights up, displaying his class as a merchant. His father looks pleased with the result, but Alan, on the other hand, was kind of expecting something more dramatic. It's basically the same function as his grimoire, except this version uses letter grades instead of numbers. The process continues as some kids walk away with impressive talents, while others don't get anything worth mentioning. A few hours pass, and now only 2 are left, Alan and Krena. Krena's turn is up, and she practically sprints over to the crystal with excitement. The second she touches it, the whole thing erupts in a blinding white glow. Her father panics for a second, thinking maybe something's gone wrong, but the priests are just frozen in shock. Turns out, the reading is legit, and Krena just unlocked the Sword Lord class, one of the most powerful titles out there. Her dad is over the moon, but Krena herself doesn't seem to grasp just how big of a deal this is. Alan isn't all that shocked by the announcement because he's been getting his ass handed to him by Krena for years now, so it kind of checks out. But now it's his turn, and the priest tells him to step up to the altar. When he lays his hand on the crystal ball, nothing happens at first, but then there's a sudden flash of light, and the damn thing blasts him backward. Rodden rushes over, making sure Alan's okay, then turns to the priest and asks what talent his son got, since reading isn't exactly his strong suit. Based on how strong the crystal reacted, he's expecting something insane, but instead the priest says that Alan has 0 talent. Alan's stunned. No way, that's right. He knows for damn sure he's got a skill, but when he looks up at the board, it confirms it. Every single stat is locked at E rank. He's convinced this whole mess is Elmia's fault for completely botching the summoner class code. Before he can spiral too hard, Rodden wraps his arms around him from behind, trying to soften the blow. He doesn't want Alan to feel crushed about not having a talent. They head home together after that, and despite what happened, nobody treats him any differently. Alan really does appreciate how his family supports him, but deep down, he knows the whole no talent thing is bullshit. His grimoire still works like normal, so he figures the E ranks have more to do with the fact that he's stuck playing on Hell mode. All the other kids are the same age as him and probably got evaluated based on their leveling potential. But in Alan's case, since it takes him literally 100 times more XP to gain a level, it makes sense that his stats are stuck in the gutter, even if his real strength is way higher than the board shows. Most folks would lost their minds over something like this, but Alan isn't some casual noob playing for fun. He lives for the brutal grind. Still, he can't shake the feeling that something's seriously off with the summoner class, especially since he saw some sketchy error code pop up at the bottom of his appraisal. He's already planning to file a mountain of complaints to the dev team over it. The following day, Alan tags along with his family to visit Krina's place, but on the way, he starts picking up on something odd. His dad's been acting off. Over at Krina's house, everyone's in the mood to party and celebrate her becoming a sword lord, but Rodden still looks like he's chewing on a lemon. Gerda flat out refuses to join the celebration until Rodden quits the attitude. At first, Alan thinks maybe his dad's just bitter that Krina got something special, but that's not like him at all. Rodden's not that petty, so whatever's eating at him, it has to be something deeper. The two of them keep going at it for another minute until Gerda finally blurts out that Rodden mentioned cutting ties between their families right before they sat down. Rodden stands by what he said, explaining that now that Krina's a sword lord, she's got a damn near guaranteed way out of this tiny backwater town. If things go well, she might even rise to nobility. And if that happens, staying connected to a broke family like Rodden's could just drag her down. Gerda fires back, shouting that he doesn't give a damn about status or any of that crap. But Rodden keeps pushing, saying he's only doing what's best for Krina. The argument heats up again, but their wives eventually step in and pull them apart before it gets worse. Alan's kind of thrown off by how chill everyone seems about the fight, so he quietly asks Gerda's wife if this kind of thing happens often. She just laughs and says yeah, it used to happen all the time, but they always made up after. Turns out, the four of them have been close since they were kids, born and raised in the same village. About 10 years back, when word first got out about building a new settlement, they all jumped in together and helped lay the foundations. Gerda and Rodden bonded a ton during that time. Thinking back on it all makes them realize how dumb this argument really is. Not long after, a message comes in that the Night Order has taken an interest in Krina and they're on their way over. Alan figures the news about her Sword Lord class must spread like wildfire. It's a good thing, of course, as she's finally getting the recognition she deserves. But Gerda still seems a little uneasy because she's way too young to be signing up for knighthood just yet. Then, out of nowhere, one of the kids from the appraisal ceremony, the kind who got a decent talent, decides to mouth off. He walks up to Alan and tells him he doesn't belong here, calling him a talentless reject. But Alan couldn't care less. He's still got his summoner powers, so this loser's opinion doesn't mean squat. But Krina isn't having it. No one talks trash about her best friend. She steps up and tells the punk to back off, nearly lops off his damn finger in the process, before Gerda quickly steps in and drags her away. Right after that, the village chief announces that the Night Order has finally arrived. The whole place lights up since nobody here gets to see real knights up close. The chief then calls for Gerda and Krina to come meet the knight captain. Krina's practically shaking with excitement since she's always dreamed of becoming a knight, so meeting the captain in person is like the ultimate wish for her. Alan starts wondering if the knights are planning to take Krina back to the capital for training, but before the knight captain can say anything, Gerda jumps in, saying he can't allow it since she's still just a kid. The captain shrugs it off, saying age doesn't matter. If she's really a sword lord, then she should be more than capable of handling the training. There's no issue, unless of course they made the whole thing up and lied about her being a sword lord just to deceive the Night Order. Gerda quickly denies it, swearing he's telling the truth, but it's already too late. The captain made up his mind, and he orders his vice captain to test Krina in a duel right here, right now, and without hesitating for even a second, the man agrees. Gerda then pleads with the captain to rethink this. He doesn't want his daughter's life on the line over some test, but the captain makes it crystal clear that if Krina refuses to fight, that alone will count as proof that she's a fraud, and if that's the case, not just her, but her entire family will be put to death. One of the knights then hands her a sword. Any normal 5-year-old would have been shaking in their boots by now, but not Krina. The moment she realizes she gets to wield a real weapon, she accepts the duel without hesitation. The crowd clears and the duel begins. Lybrand steps forward to face her, and Krina doesn't waste a second and charges in at full speed. And from one look, she's swinging a sword twice her size like it's made of paper, and she's actually managing to keep up with Libran, forcing him to stay on guard, but he's still handling her without too much trouble. The Knight Captain watches with a cold stare, clearly not impressed by what he's seen so far. But then Krena blocks one of Libran's attacks cleanly and gets ready to counter. Before she can strike though, Libran slams his foot into her and sends her flying across the street, crashing straight into a wall. Jirda loses it. The second he sees his daughter tossed like that, he tries to rush in, but the knights slam him down and pin him to the ground. Alan and Rodden try to help, but they get pushed down too. Alan can't believe what he's seeing. This isn't right. Whether Krena is a sword lord or not, she's still a kid, and the guy she's fighting is a grown-ass knight with years of battle experience. But just then, something changes. Krena starts getting back up, and the air around her shifts. There's this heavy, dangerous pressure rolling off her, and she's not saying a word, just standing there, radiating pure menace. Without wasting a breath, Krena charges in with another full-force assault, locked in like a heat-seeking missile. This time, Libran doesn't stand a chance. She absolutely steamrolls him, shattering his sword clean in half and nearly lopping off his damn head. Krena looks a little let down that the match ended so fast, but she clearly enjoyed herself. She casually thanks Libran for the warm-up and strolls off, leaving the poor guy with nothing but the crushing fact that he just got wrecked by a 5-year-old. Jirda exhales hard, grateful that his daughter made it out in one piece, and starts showering her with praise for how well she fought. But before he can even process what just happened, the Knight Captain steps in, and Jirda instantly goes on guard, not wanting that man anywhere near his daughter. This time, the captain drops the arrogance and admits Krena really is a sword lord. He even apologizes for dragging her into the duel. He says he wants to have a proper conversation about her future, but Jirda instantly shuts him down. The captain then offers to let him bring backup to the meeting if that'll help, and after a moment of hesitation, Jirda agrees, only because it makes him feel a bit more secure. They all head to the chief's house for lunch, where Xenoph properly apologizes for the stunt he pulled earlier. He explains that he was ordered by the Baron to verify if a genuine sword lord existed in this village, and after what he just witnessed, there's no denying it. Xenoph then brings up how 3 years ago, a so-called sword saint popped up in a count's household. But that instantly raises red flags for Alan because in the game's system, sword saints are only born from common backgrounds, not noble blood, so that one must have been a total fraud. Turns out that fake ended up serving the royal family, but couldn't live up to the hype. Once they rechecked him, they realized he was just a regular swordsman faking his rank, and after several nobles were caught bluffing their way up the ranks, the kingdom enforced a zero-tolerance policy on forged talent reports. That said, Xenoph genuinely apologizes again for putting Krena through such a rough ordeal. He reassures Jirda that no one's trying to rip her away from him. Instead, they want her to stay home and keep training as usual. And if she chooses to, once she turns 12, she'll have the option to enter the Knight Academy. After 2 relentless years of non-stop effort, Alan finally unlocks the 3rd tier of his grimoire, and he's absolutely fired up. With this new upgrade, his summoning abilities take a massive leap, so he can now power up his creatures even further and command up to 30 F-rank summons at once. His buff stacking game just hit a whole new level, so he's itching to try it out, but dinner's already on the table, so he heads back inside. As for his family, things at home are changing fast. His kid brother just turned 2, and their mom's expecting again, so another child will be joining the family soon. While his parents are tossing around baby names, Alan randomly gets a divine message from Elmia, the deity of creation, and ends up blurting the name out loud without thinking. His folks instantly assume he's suggesting they name the baby after a deity, which is totally off limits in this world. Alan can't explain the real reason, so he quickly changes the topic and mentions how Rodden's old scars seem to have faded completely. Rodden casually says it's because he cleared a divine trial earlier that day while wrestling a wild boar. Alan's never heard of that before, so he asks for details, and Rodden explains that sometimes after a tough battle, your body feels totally renewed and your wounds heal instantly. Alan figures it must be what happens when someone levels up in this world. Rodden's a beast of a fighter, so it makes sense if he levels up a lot. Alan, on the other hand, might have a level 3 grimoire, but his body's still stuck at level 1 since he hasn't fought a single monster yet. If he wants to grow stronger, he's got to jump into real combat. That's easier said than done though. He's not allowed to leave the village without permission. The only real way around that rule is by joining a hunting party, but the moment he brings it up, his dad shuts it down right away. He refuses to let Alan risk his life like that. Later that night, when the whole house is asleep, Alan opens his grimoire to check out the message from Elmia. He already has a pretty good guess what it's about. He sent a heated complaint after that appraisal ceremony fiasco. Turns out, Elmia apologizes for the glitch that made him look talentless during the test. It's fixed now, so next time he's appraised, his summoner class should appear properly. The deity also explains that Alan's stats show as E rank because he picked Hell mode, but in reality, he's way stronger than that. And to fix it, they've added a special stat section just for Alan. Alan scans through his updated stat sheet, and to his surprise, it's way better than he expected. He's packing several S and A rank stats, right on par with what Krenna had gotten, so he feels like all those long hours of grinding are finally paying off. Satisfied with the results, he moves on to the fun part, testing out his new powers. First up is that enhanced skill. He pulls out a grasshopper card, activates the ability, and watches as the stat boost kicks in. The buff clearly powers up the grasshopper itself, but Alan quickly notices that it doesn't boost the buffs he receives through the summon. Still curious, he decides to call out the creature just to see the changes in real time, and as soon as it spawns, it gives off a faint glow for a few seconds. Definitely looks enhanced, but outside of that, not much else seems different. Before he can dig any deeper, his mom walks in to check on him, and the second she sees the grasshopper, she freaks out and flattens it without hesitation. The following day, Rodden gears up for a hunting trip, and while he's out, Alan slips into the backyard to mess around more with his grimoire. He's been trying every card combo he can think of, hoping to unlock a new summon. He's already burned through most of his viable pairs, and this last combo feels like his final shot. Thankfully, the fusion works this time, and he gets a new card, but it's labeled grass, so he's not sure how useful that'll be. On the upside, it seems to come with an MP buff, which means it might help him increase the number of summons he can use in a day. Curious, Alan summons the grass card, and to his utter confusion, an apple creature pops out. It's not built for combat at all, but it does have a weird skill called aroma, so Alan asks it to show him, and the apple sinks into the ground like a seed, then sprouts a small stem, and sure enough, the stem gives off a sweet, pleasant scent. Just as he's trying to figure out what to make of it, his mom pops up again to check on him. Alan panics and tries to get the apple to hide, but it doesn't respond, so his mom ends up spotting the stem, but thankfully she just assumes it's a regular plant and walks off without another thought. Still, Alan knows this thing's going to need a whole lot more testing before he figures out what it's actually capable of. Later that day, Alan's back at it, sparring with Krenna like usual. But even with all his new buffs from leveling up, he still can't land a solid hit. Her strength's just on another level. Still, Krenna notices something. Alan's gotten way tougher. That catches him off guard, so he checks his stats and finds out that his sword mastery has already hit level 3, all thanks to their regular training sessions, and he's pumped to see some real progress. Then he remembers he recently got a dog summon that has a bite attack, and he's itching to try it out, but using it against Krenna wouldn't be fair, so he holds off. After training, Alan spends the rest of the afternoon chucking rocks at a tree in the backyard, hoping to trigger some kind of new skill or awakening. So far, it's a total bust, and he's starting to feel like he's just wasting his time. He hasn't had much of a chance to train outside of this either, since he's been busy taking care of his little brother. Mash, who's been tagging along, eventually complains that he's bored of the whole rock-throwing routine. Alan apologizes and promises they'll do something else soon, but he just wants to finish a few more throws. While Alan lines up his last tosses, Mash notices something weird near the house, a bunch of saplings growing where there definitely weren't any yesterday. Turns out, that's the aftermath of Alan spamming his apple summons earlier to farm MP boosts, and it worked. Thanks to stacking the buff, Alan's MP recovery time is now down to 5 hours instead of 6, which means he can push his mana output by over 15% every day. It may not be flashy, but it's progress. As night falls, everyone gathers for dinner like always, but Rodden still hasn't come back from the hunt. That's odd, especially since the group wasn't planning to go deep into the woods today. Theresia tries to stay calm, putting on a brave face, but that calm is shattered when the hunters return in a panic, carrying Rodden's unconscious body. One glance is all it takes to see he's in critical condition. He caught a boar's fang straight to the gut, but they managed to cauterize the wound on the way back, and he's barely hanging on. The only reason he's still breathing is the healing herb they gave him during the trip home. Theresia stunned to hear that since they're expensive, and she has no idea how they even got one. Gerda explains that after the Night Captain apologized for how he treated them, he offered a bag of gold coins to make up for it. They used that gold to buy the herb, but it still wasn't enough to fully heal Rodden. Tensions spike as the other hunters start yelling, blaming the entire disaster on the commoners. But then all the shouting wakes Mash, who bursts into tears, so Alan quickly scoops him up and takes him back to bed. The rest of the hunters decide to clear out, leaving the family alone to process everything in peace. Once things finally settle down, Alan quietly asks what really happened and if it's true that a commoner is the reason for all this. Gerda explains that a few days earlier, he and Rodden were called in by the village chief, who told them that commoners would be joining the next hunt. Boar meat is incredibly valuable, so most of it goes straight to the Baron, but the rest is split between the hunters. Sometimes it gets traded for other supplies, but unless you're out there hunting yourself, getting your hands on any decent boar meat is tough. Even so, none of the commoners had ever joined a hunt before, and with good reason. It's dangerous as hell, so people get hurt, and some even die every year. So naturally they've always kept their distance. But ever since Rodden's name started spreading like wildfire as some kind of legendary hunter, some of the commoners got the idea that if they tagged along, he'd do all the heavy lifting while they enjoyed the rewards. So they went to the chief and asked to be included in future hunts. Rodden and Gerda were against it, but since it came from the chief, they had no choice but to comply. And just like they feared, it all went downhill fast. During practice, the commoners barely put in any effort. And when the actual hunt began, the second they locked eyes with a real boar, they panicked and dropped their weapons and bolted. Their cowardice shattered the entire formation, and to make matters worse, one of them tripped while running, right in the boar's path. Rodden instinctively rushed in to shield him and took a tusk to the gut for it. The rest of the group managed to kill the boar eventually, but the damage was done. Gerda promises to bring over Rodden's share of the meat tomorrow, but beyond that, there's not much else he can offer. Alan just sits there, feeling completely useless. All this time, he'd been obsessed with powering himself up and never once thought about helping the people who actually needed him. By the following day, Rodden finally regains consciousness, and everyone is beyond relieved that he pulled through. But even with Rodden awake, Alan can't shake the weight pressing down on him. Up till now, he'd been treating this like some kind of RPG game. But for everyone else here, this is life, it's real, and it's harsh. And surviving each day takes everything they've got, so the least he can do is use the power he's been given to ease their burden, even a little. Not long after, Gerda shows up again, bringing Rodden's share of the meat just like he promised. He's glad to see Rodden alive, but it's clear from the look on his face that the injury has done real damage, so Rodden won't be able to hunt again, at least not in time to help prepare for winter. Gerda steps up and offers to share from his personal stash to help support Rodden's family while he recovers. Rodden genuinely appreciates the offer, but before anything else can be said, Alan suddenly speaks up. He tells everyone that he wants to take over for his father. His voice is steady, his expression firm, and it's clear to everyone in the room that he means it, so no one argues. And later that day, Alan gets right to work. He heads to the village well and starts hauling water back home. The men nearby warn him to take it easy because hauling that much water isn't something a kid should be doing, but Alan handles it like it's nothing. Up until now, he's been keeping the effects of his boosted stats under wraps. But with all the attention on Krena as the village's rising hero, it's probably okay for him to stand out a little. Once the water's taken care of, he joins Gerda in the fields to harvest potatoes. Gerda shows him how to properly dig them up, expecting Alan to fumble through it. Instead, Alan yanks them from the ground one-handed like it's child's play, and in no time at all, he's filled 3 full baskets. But when he finds out that over half of that will be taken by the Baron as tax, it hits him just how unfair this system really is. He starts thinking about other ways to get more food for his family, until the village chief suddenly shows up. The chief is there to personally apologize to Rodden. He knows the injury happened at least in part because of the orders he gave. He wants to make amends, and he's also brought the man responsible for the incident to apologize. The guy clearly isn't a bad person, just someone who panicked and made a mistake, so he accepts full responsibility. Rodden tells him he's not angry, but urges him to think ahead next time, and the man nods, promising not to let something like that happen again. Later on, Alan heads back out to the open fields with a plan forming in his head. He clears out a large patch of space and begins summoning a small army of frogs. Each one uses its provoke skill, which should lure out wild animals like ducks, nothing too dangerous. But instead of ducks, Alan ends up attracting a monster bird. For a split second, he considers running, since it's clearly stronger than he expected, but then he thinks of his family, of the food they need, the help they've lost, and decides to take the risk. And with all the stat boosts he's stacked, he figures he might just have a shot. He dashes in and lands a solid blow to the back of the bird's head before it realizes what's going on. Right after, he summons a pack of dogs to swarm it. The dogs do some solid damage, snapping and clawing at the bird from all sides. But it doesn't take long for the creature to recover and start tearing through them one by one. As each summon goes down, Alan's buffs start fading, leaving him more and more vulnerable. And once the last dog is gone, the monster sets its sights on Alan, who suddenly finds himself in serious danger, face to face with a raging enemy, and no backup left. As a desperate final move, he summons 2 leeches and they instantly clamp onto the Alba Heron, draining its blood with ruthless efficiency. The monster starts to falter, just enough to give Alan a short opening to figure out his next move. He's far from full power because he's already down a couple of summons and missing key buffs, but he stays composed. He's got a clear plan in mind to end this with one clean, decisive strike. Alan calls his wolves back into action and orders both them and the leeches to attack all at once. As they rush in, Alan charges straight through with them, launching himself forward and slamming a precise, brutal sword strike right into the Alba Heron's skull. The impact lands hard enough to take the beast down and make damn sure it doesn't get back up. A moment later, his grimoire lights up with a message saying he successfully defeated the Alba Heron and earned 100 XP. Seeing that notification pumps him up. He can't help but celebrate for a second, thrilled that the plan worked. Once that rush settles, Alan brings the Alba Heron back to his family, and both of them are honestly stunned. They never imagined someone they once thought of as a total pushover could solo a dangerous beast like that. Gerda steps in and offers to help with bleeding the Alba Heron properly. Once they've tied the body down, he gives Alan a full breakdown on how to cut and portion the meat correctly. He points out which parts are edible, which ones aren't, and explains the proper method for separating the good cuts. Gerda also mentions that monsters carry magic stones inside them, and by law, any stone found in monsters ranked D or above is subject to taxation. That said, Gerda doesn't seem too worried about it. He figures it's not like poor commoners like them would get much use out of a magic stone anyway. Even so, he's convinced they can negotiate a better deal from the chieftain, especially once they explain that it was Alan who actually did the hunting this time, since Rodden was too injured to go himself. The following morning, they head to the chieftain's office, sticking to their plan to use Rodden's injury as leverage. At first, the chieftain pushes back, saying they should only get the smaller portion, but Gerda and Alan keep pressing, reminding him just how serious Rodden's condition is and how a kid like Alan had to risk his life just to bring food back. Eventually, the chieftain caves and agrees to give them the larger share, exactly as they hoped. He tells them they can keep all the meat and he'll only be taking the wings and the magic stones for himself. Still, Alan decides to push things a bit further and asks the chieftain if they'd be allowed to keep making the same kind of deal going forward. Gerda jumps in to back him up, doing everything he can to help persuade the chieftain. After thinking it over for a moment, the chieftain finally gives them the green light and agrees to let them continue under the same terms. After 3 days, Alan heads out again and uses the same strategy to take on 2 more Alba Heron. Having already taken one down before, he's feeling a lot more confident now, and it shows. With the help of his leeches, his wolves, and that trusty wooden sword of his, Alan manages to bring down both beasts in record time. Since that first successful hunt, he's been going out every 3 days, but this is the first time he's come back without losing a single summon, and he's honestly thrilled with how well it went. Right on cue, his grimoire flashes and confirms the win, 2 Alba Heron down and 200 XP gained. Even better, it tells him he's officially leveled up and reached level 2. Alan practically explodes with excitement and pulls up his stat window immediately. Sure enough, all of his HP and MP have been fully restored thanks to the level up. But as he looks closer, he notices something strange. His stat increase is only about 60% of what it should be. He doesn't overthink it though. Maybe it's just because he just hit level 2 and the boost hasn't fully kicked in yet. Either way, he's still pumped. All that effort is finally paying off. The more he thinks about it, the more he starts to believe that this could be the trial of the deities that Rodden once mentioned. And honestly, that thought makes him feel incredible. Still, he knows that sooner or later, he's going to have to come clean and tell his family the truth. Afterward, Alan returns home, and Rodden's stunned to see him drag back 2 Alba Heron in one go. After that, Alan meets up with Krina for a bit of sword training. But even in the middle of sparring, his mind keeps drifting, thinking about when and how he'll take down more Alba Heron. Since it's migration season and there's an abundance of them around, he figures if he stays consistent, he could hit level 3 by taking out around 20 more. That train of thought gets cut short when Krina suddenly smacks him with a solid hit to the head, clearly ending the match in her favor. Alan then admits defeat, and Krina casually waves him off as she walks away. Afterward at night, Alan decides it's finally time to come clean with his parents about how he's been taking down those Alba Heron with such ease. but he's well aware he can't just blurt out that he got dragged into some game he found online because his parents would probably think he'd lost his mind. So instead, he crafts a more believable story. He tells them that when he was only a year old, he received an oracle from Elmia, the deity of creation. Alan explains that an oracle is basically a divine blessing that makes someone both smarter and stronger than most people. On top of that, it means he'll be tested with trials that push far beyond what even 100 normal men could endure. Hearing that, Rodden immediately picks up on what's really happening. He already had his suspicion because he noticed that morning that the cut on Alan's face had completely vanished. That alone told him Alan must have already gone through one of the deity's trials. But the Regia is still trying to make sense of it all, especially since Alan's appraisal results last year said he had no talent whatsoever. That's when Alan adds another layer to the story. He claims he received a second oracle from Lord Elmia just a few months ago. He explains that his appraisal came out low because the process couldn't account for how slowly his trials would develop. On top of that, he says the system couldn't recognize his talent at the time because it was too new to be properly evaluated. Rodden is floored because it means Alan really does have a talent after all. When he asks what that talent is, Alan says he doesn't actually know. The oracle didn't give him the full answer. It hurts him to lie about it, but he knows he can't tell the truth. Revealing that he's a summoner who can control monsters would freak people out, and there's no way he can say anything about being reborn either. In the end, the Regia pulls Alan into a hug, calling him brave and incredible, especially for someone so young to be carrying all this on his shoulders. Rodden then asks what Alan wants to do going forward, and Alan tells him that for now, he just wants to prove he's worthy by completing every trial. Rodden's proud of that answer, but he also reminds Alan not to be afraid to lean on others when things get tough. Alan thanks them both for being so understanding and for backing him no matter what. Rodden finishes by saying that it's probably best to keep all of this under wraps for now. If the wrong people start thinking he's a fake prophet, things could get ugly fast. But the only one they'll let in on the truth is Gerda, since he never stops hyping up Krena as a future sword lord. Rodden figures it's finally his turn to brag about how awesome his own kid is too. By the time winter rolls around, Alan pulls out one of the stored albahirons and begins butchering it piece by piece. Once that's done, he heads into town with Gerda to trade the meat for supplies. Gerda's already caught wind of the big news that Alan is being chosen and tested by Lord Elmia, and honestly, he's not the least bit shocked. He always had a gut feeling there was something different about that kid. As they travel together, the two of them chat along the way. At one point, Alan brings up the topic of the difference between commoners and serfs. Gerda explains that it mostly comes down to status and taxation. Serfs live under a whole different system, where every adult has to cough up 3 gold coins a year, and each child costs 1. Alan listens carefully, and then asks what it would take for a serf to rise up and become a commoner. Gerda tells him it'd require a tribute of 10 gold coins per family member. He also mentions there are whispers about a certain baron occasionally granting commoner status as a reward, but those are just rumors, and no one knows if they're true. Hearing all this, Alan quickly does the math. With his mother expecting another child, that would make them a family of 5, meaning they'd need 50 gold coins to earn their way out of serfdom. Alan spends the rest of the day working trades with Gerda and slowly starts to get a solid feel for how the barter system works. By the time they head back, he's carrying a fat bundle of firewood on his back. Realizing he now has a decent grasp on how town trading operates, he starts thinking about ways to run some market research next time he comes in. When Alan returns to trade on his own, he takes a much more methodical approach. He carefully tracks the barter and market value of every item he sees, recording all of it so he can use that info later. Eventually, he steps into an herbal shop and asks the merchant if there's any kind of medicine that can restore MP. The shopkeeper immediately says no, those kinds of items are way too pricey for their store to keep in stock. Still, Alan takes his time and scans the shelves full of herbs and medicines. Realizing that documenting all of them by hand would take ages, he focuses hard, and with just his thoughts, his grimoire responds, absorbing the details of every herb in the shop without him having to touch a thing. Following that, Alan asks the shopkeeper if he happens to have any Müller's flowers in stock. But the merchant's expression instantly shifts, and he gets visibly annoyed the moment Alan mentions that name. He explains that the last time someone asked for one, it turned into a whole mess. Apparently, Gerda stormed into the store, demanding a Müller's flower because a friend of his was seriously ill. He didn't even pay the full price up front, just promised to settle the rest later. The merchant never got the rest of the payment, and to make things worse, that flower happened to be the last one in stock, so that's what really ticks him off. Hearing all this, Alan quickly pieces it together. Gerda must have rushed in that day to buy the herb that ended up saving Rodden's life after the night he was attacked. If the merchant had flat out refused to sell it, Alan might not even have a father right now. Wanting to show his gratitude, Alan hands over some albaharon jerky as a thank you gift and sincerely thanks the merchant for his kindness. Then he quietly heads out of the shop. While walking through town, Alan finds himself checking out a few weapon displays when he suddenly bumps into a familiar face, the same kid from the appraisal ceremony with the axe talent, Dogra, and standing beside him is the chieftain's son Pelmos. Alan knows Dogra is nothing but trouble, so he tries to mind his business and slip away. But Dogra is not having that. He smacks Alan on the head and immediately demands that he become his underling. Alan responds by calmly pulling out his wooden sword and pointing it straight at him. Dogra flinches, calling foul because he doesn't have a weapon. Alan shrugs and tells him he's fine with a fair fight. Dogra can go grab whatever weapon he wants, and Alan will wait. Dogra runs off and returns soon after with a sword, then charges straight at Alan. But Alan dodges with ease, deflecting every swing. Dogra's strikes are heavy, which makes sense for someone with an axe talent, but even with all that muscle, he's got nothing on Krina. Alan decides to end it quickly. He knocks the sword out of Dogra's hand and wins clean. And without saying much, Alan turns and walks away like it was no big deal, which only makes Dogra seethe even more. Later that evening, Alan returns home and sees Rodden unwrapping his bandages. Looks like he's finally healed up and ready to head back into the wild. Lersia, however, isn't so thrilled, and she warns him not to overexert himself and risk another injury. The very next day at Krina's place, Dogra shows up again, this time looking for a rematch. But he gets wrecked, and not just once but over and over again. Still, his pride refuses to let it go, so he keeps demanding more fights, no matter how many times he loses. At the same time, Alan's younger brother Mash has already started sword training with Krina, which gets Alan fired up to see how Mash will turn out during his appraisal ceremony in 2 years. Not long after, the new baby is born, and the family decides to name her Miola. Sometime later, Rodden comes back from a hunt with Gerda and brings some unexpected news. Apparently, the chieftain has summoned their whole family. The chieftain says the Baron now wants them to increase their boar deliveries from 10 to 15. To make that happen, he wants the commoners to be allowed to join the hunt again this year. Lersia immediately thinks this demand is insane, especially after what happened to Rodden during the last hunt. Rodden admits he was ready to turn it down until he found out it wasn't a request. It was a direct order from the Baron himself, and if they can't deliver 15 boars by winter, the Empire's going to bring in new serfs from other regions. Alan picks up on the implications right away. More serfs mean less land to go around, and that would put non-hunters at risk of losing their plots. Gerda chimes in and says that's not even the worst part. Apparently, the Baron expects them to bring in 20 boars by the end of next year. Rodden figures the only way to make that happen is to increase the hunting frequency instead of sticking to their usual schedule of once every 10 days. That's when Alan speaks up and suggests they should just follow the Baron's order. Gerda quickly scolds him for cutting into an adult conversation, but Rodden stops him and lets Alan continue. Alan explains that since it's a direct order from the Baron, refusing isn't an option, and even if the commoners turn out to be dead weight, they'll just have to find a way to make that dead weight useful. Alan says that based on his experience with games, turning underpowered characters into something valuable is kind of his thing. He tells them to trust him and let him handle it. After all, he was blessed with Elmia's wisdom, and if anyone can come up with a working strategy, it's him. The following morning, Alan and Rodden link up with a group of commoners who will be joining them on the boar hunt. When they spot Alan, most of them are shocked to see such a young kid tagging along. Rodden quickly explains that they'll all be following his hunting method, and Alan is just there to observe and pick up experience. Alan politely assures everyone that he won't be a burden and bows to show his gratitude for letting him tag along. Even though part of him wishes he could be more involved, he knows that the real priority is helping train the newcomers. His focus is on giving them enough field experience so that they can help with future hunts because he doesn't want anyone getting seriously hurt like his dad did during last year's boar incident. One of the men quietly approaches Rodden and apologizes for the injury he caused him the year before. Rodden brushes it off with a smile, telling him not to worry about it. Instead, he reminds the group to keep their eyes on today's hunt and leave the past behind. With that, the forest gate creaks open, and the team starts their approach. As they step into the woods, Alan suddenly realizes that this is the first time in 7 years, since becoming a serf, that he's ever stepped outside the village. It feels like a small but meaningful step forward, so maybe it's the beginning of a path that leads to freeing his family from this life. What thrills him most, though, is the idea of catching a glimpse of the legendary White Dragon Mountains. There's an old tale that a mythical white dragon lies near those peaks, and Alan has always dreamed of seeing it, even from a distance. Not long after the hunt kicks off, everyone splits up into position as a massive wild boar crashes through the underbrush. Right on cue, the bait squad steps in to steer the beast in the right direction. The tank team follows up, holding the boar in place and keeping it from charging or breaking loose. Then, once it's boxed in, the strike team rushes in to finish the job. Alan watches everything unfold with sharp focus, realizing this is the same formation and approach his father and the veterans have been using for over a decade. The coordination, the timing, it's a well-oiled system. And seeing it play out up close, it hits him just how smart and effective it really is. After the boar is finally taken down, the group of commoners can't help but feel a wave of pride rush over them. To them, pulling off a successful hunt like this feels like passing a divine trial. It's proof of their growth and teamwork. Alan figures that since the boar was classified as a C-rank monster, they probably racked up a solid amount of experience points. Curious, he opens his grimoire to check his own stats. But to his disappointment, he finds that he didn't gain a single point. Thinking it through, he realizes that makes sense. He didn't actually fight, just watched everything from the sidelines. Even so, he feels content seeing the others level up and start to believe in themselves more. Once things settle down, Alan strikes up a casual chat with a few of the villagers. The topic shifts to monster meat, and they start swapping stories about the tastiest creatures they've ever carved up. One of the men, clearly a fan of monster cooking, offers to help Alan butcher any beast he brings in. Alan takes note and quickly decides to take him up on that. He leads the man over to his stash of albaharen and asks if he can handle the butchering. Of course, the guy isn't planning to work for free, so Alan lays out a deal. For every albahone the man processes, Alan will hand over 2 full packs of meat as payment. The offer is surprisingly generous, and the man agrees right away without a second thought. Alan's got a clear reason for this arrangement. He's still hustling to save up 50 gold coins to buy his family out of serfdom. If he hired a pro butcher, it would cost him a small fortune. But with this trade, he gets the job done right without wasting his precious coins. Soon after, the hunt kicks back into gear. This time, they shake things up and decide to break into smaller units instead of sticking together. The new setup lets them cover more ground and bag twice as many boars in half the time. Even so, something keeps nagging at Alan. He still doesn't get why the Baron is pushing so hard to harvest more boars this year than ever before. But orders are orders. And when the Baron speaks, nobody really has the freedom to question it. Out of nowhere, one of the boars charges straight at them. Gerda doesn't waste a second and jumps into action, slamming the beast head-on with a crushing blow that instantly takes it down. He then calls out to the rookie hunters, urging them to step in and finish the job. They do just that, and once again they're filled with pride for pulling off another successful hunt. The previous time, Alan didn't see any changes to his stats, but this time is a totally different story. He checks his status screen and is hit with a wave of joy because his stats have gone up, and he's officially reached level 3. After thinking it over, he figures out how it happened. The trick was simple, but it worked. As long as one of his summoned creatures makes physical contact with the enemy before it dies, the system counts him as part of the fight. Right before the boar went down, Alan summoned Denka, and the boar ended up stepping on him, making contact. That tiny moment was enough for Alan to earn experience, though it came at a cost. Denka was killed in the process, and as Denka's spirit drifts upward, Alan quietly apologizes, but deep down, he knows it was worth it. After 3 months, Alan and Krena are invited to the chieftain's home to celebrate the new year. After the visit, they head back to their own place to properly enjoy the holiday. The table is packed with food, and Gerda and his wife drop by to join the fun. Everyone digs in, laughing and enjoying the cozy vibe. During the meal, Gerda casually asks Alan if the chieftain had said anything about them. Alan nods and explains that the chief made sure to personally thank them for all their hard work. Rodden had expected that they would easily hit the goal of bringing in 20 boars for the year, just like he'd planned. Alan adds that the chieftain was so pleased with how things were going that he gave him a bottle of liquor as a reward. Alan knows full well how much Rodden and Gerda love their drinks, and how rowdy they get once the alcohol kicks in, so he comes up with a sneaky idea to use it as leverage. He proposes a challenge. If he wins, he gets to officially join the next hunt, weapon in hand, and fight like one of the team. But if Rodden and Gerda win, the bottle's all theirs. As soon as Alan lays out the rules, it hits them that they've already walked straight into his trap. But it's too late to back out now. Their craving for the liquor is stronger than their caution, so they agree to go along with it anyway. They ask what kind of contest he has in mind. Alan, keeping a calm expression, says he wants to settle it with an arm wrestling match. Both Rodden and Gerda are stunned that Alan would even suggest something like that shit. To them, it feels obvious that grown men like themselves would be far stronger than a kid his age. Still, with that bottle on the line, they decide to go for it. But what they don't realize is that Alan came prepared. He's been saving up a few strength-boosting cards just for a moment like this. With those in play, he's sure he can go toe-to-toe with even full-grown men like Rodden and Gerda. Gerda steps up first, confident this'll be over in seconds. At first, he doesn't even take Alan seriously, but once they lock hands and the match begins, Gerda's eyes widen as Alan's got way more power than he expected. The kid holds steady, refusing to give an inch. Gerda fights back hard, straining against the pressure, but Alan digs in and eventually slams his hand down to win the round. Impressed, Alan makes a mental note. Gerda's strength stat is probably somewhere between 150 and 200. Then it's Rodden's turn, and from the start, Alan can tell this isn't going to be as easy. Rodden's strength feels like it's in a whole different league. Even with all his buffs, Alan struggles to keep up, but Rodden doesn't even flinch, and he just slowly but surely forces Alan's arm down and takes the win. Sticking to his word, Alan hands over the liquor. Rodden and Gerda accept it with big grins, and not long after, they're all sharing drinks and laughing together. Even though Alan didn't win the right to join the next hunt, the match wasn't a total loss. He gained something just as valuable, a better understanding of where he stands. Now he knows Gerda's power is likely around D rank, while Rodden is closer to C rank. Rodden then tells him that unless he can beat him in a contest of strength, there's no way he's letting Alan join the boar hunts. But instead of getting discouraged, Alan takes it as motivation. He's more fired up than ever to train harder and prove himself. Not long after, Alan notices something new. His summoner level has gone up again. Eager to see what's changed, he quickly pulls out his grimoire and opens it. As Alan flips through the pages of his grimoire, he's blown away by the number of new abilities that have unlocked. But one skill in particular grabs his full attention. It's the ability to view E-rank cards anytime he wants. Alan immediately realizes how insanely valuable this is. With constant access to these cards, he's confident his strength will climb faster than ever. In fact, he's already thinking about taking on Rodden again, and this time he might actually have a shot at winning. But as he continues scanning the pages, something unusual catches his eye. A new page has appeared, one that definitely wasn't there before. He flips to it and finds what looks like a hollow slot carved directly into the paper. After some quick testing, he figures it out. It's a storage ability. He can place items into the grimoire as long as they fit inside the space. Strangely, the interior stretches much deeper than it seems, making the pocket far more useful than its size suggests. What really throws Alan off is that storage magic is considered a divine tier skill, ultra rare and extremely powerful. So why would someone like him suddenly gain access to it now? The timing doesn't feel random. It's almost like someone or something wanted him to receive it at this exact moment. The following day, Alan sets out to test his new E-rank summoning ability. He pulls out a magic stone and activates the skill. The first creature he summons is an insect, a radiant butterfly with dazzling wings that shimmer in the light. It's harmless, but its magical aura is unmistakable. Curious, he summons again. This time, a saber-toothed tiger materializes. Alan instinctively backs up the moment he sees it. With its huge fangs and powerful frame, the beast looks terrifying. But after watching it for a while, Alan realizes it's completely tame and not a threat. Slowly, he gets used to its presence and decides to name it Tama, officially welcoming the tiger as a new member of his growing team. After that, Alan tries to fuse two of his summons together, but quickly runs into a problem. Each fusion consumes a magic stone, and that single discovery changes everything. If he wants to keep evolving his summons and pushing his strength forward, he'll need a constant stockpile of magic stones. And the only way he knows to get them is by killing horned rabbits. At night, Alan brings up the magic stone issue with his father. To his disappointment, Rodden breaks the bad news that horned rabbits won't be showing up anytime soon. A defensive trench was dug around the village not long ago, cutting off the monster's usual routes in. That means Alan's easy source of magic stones has completely dried up. Frustrated, he spends the night mulling over other options. The next morning, while Krena is busy training and handing Dogora another beating, Alan heads over to speak with Palomas. He asks if he knows anything about magic stones. Palomas, being well versed in such things, explains that D and C rank stones are generally found in the royal capital and are worth a good amount. E rank stones, on the other hand, are practically worthless and sometimes just lying around. To prove his point, Palomas casually picks one up off the ground and tosses it to Alan before strolling away. That simple gesture lights a fire in Alan's chest. If E rank stones are that easy to find, Then he doesn't need monsters, he can gather them himself. With help from the villagers, Alan starts collecting. Over time, he builds up a solid stash of E-rank magic stones. Using them, he summons every E-rank creature available to him. Just as he finishes the last summon, a wild boar suddenly bursts out of the woods, charging straight at him. But his summoned beasts leap into action, reacting instantly and tearing it down in a single strike. Alan barely has time to celebrate before another boar appears, and again one of his summons intercepts and neutralizes the threat without him lifting a finger. Then he blinks and the entire scene fades as it was all a vision. He closes his eyes once more, sinking into reflection. 7 long years as a serf, with no mentor, no handbook, just trial, error, and relentless effort. Everything he's learned, he's figured out on his own. And now, it's starting to make sense. Each type of summon has its own purpose. Insect types are ideal for debuffs. Grass types provide healing. Stone types specialize in defense. Bird types excel at scouting. Beast types handle direct combat. Together, they form a complete team, everything a traditional party needs, all controlled by one person. That's the essence of a summoner's true power, and now he finally understands why he was granted a storage skill. It wasn't random, it's there so he can carry the massive supply of magic stones his army will require. And with enough creatures at his disposal, Alan truly believes that a summoner could one day surpass even the Demon Lord's power. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the recap and are excited for the next episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our daily recaps.